There's a barrier to entry with kettlebells because they require you to really take the time and put in the work to learn how to use them properly, to learn how to use them without banging your wrists, to learn how to use them in a way that's going to give you the maximum results and, of course, also prevent you from getting injured. So when you think about a lot of the way that people work out and do resistance training, there really is no barrier to entry, right? If I go into a gym and I want to do leg day, I can go onto a leg press and a hack squat and leg extensions and all those machines. And there's a little sticker on there that tells you exactly how to use the machine, how to adjust the seat. Everything else is pretty much a no-brainer with that kind of equipment. So there really is not a barrier to entry. And if you really didn't know how to use something, of course, you could always ask a trainer to show you how to use a piece of equipment. But there's no barrier to entry when it comes to typical resistance training that most people do in the gym. And I think that people do that type of resistance training because they don't want to learn how to use kettlebells or they don't see the payoff. And believe me, there is a tremendous payoff. It's like, yes, it does take time to learn, but during that learning process, guess what? You're seeing good results in your training. It's not like your training stops while you take the time to learn how to use kettlebells. Okay, so in this video, when it comes to the foundations of kettlebell training, what I'm going to talk to you guys about is grip, the various grip positions with kettlebells, and also the transition between one position and another that happens in various exercises. Okay, so if you watch this, I know we're not doing anything fancy, we're not working out, and it feels maybe like it's not that productive, but believe me, these questions are going to arise if you're new to kettlebells and you haven't learned all of these things deeply yet. These questions are going to arise, and when they arise, you can either be prepared for them or already know what's coming up, or you can be stuck saying, how the heck do I figure this out? I don't know what's wrong. So that's what I'm going to help you with today. I'm going to try to answer questions that in the moment you don't even know what to ask. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to start off with the various positions of the kettlebell and the grip that you're going to utilize in those positions. So for demonstration purposes today, I grabbed my trusty old 4 kilo because of course I can manipulate this and use it for video purposes. It works very well. All right, so we're going to begin, and we'll start from the ground and work our way up with this weight. We're going to begin with the dead position. Okay, so the dead position is where the kettlebell would be if I was going to deadlift it. Also, if I was going to dead snatch or dead clean. There's a distinction here between the dead snatch, of course, and the ballistic snatch, because they do come from a different place, oriented with your body. Let's say a ballistic exercise starts out front. The dead position is right here. So as you can see, the kettlebell is lined up to my heels. It is right in the middle of my body, or right in the middle of my point of stability, my 2 points of stability, which are my feet, and that is the dead position. So if you're deadlifting, dead snatching, dead cleaning, that's where you want the bell to be. Very common to see people, especially when they first start training, deadlifting, snatching, and cleaning the kettlebell from way too far out front. Now, generally, this shouldn't be a problem with the clean or the snatch, because you probably shouldn't be learning those exercises until you've got this stuff nailed. But with a deadlift, make sure that it's lined up to your heels and that every single rep, you put the kettlebell back to that same spot. Okay, now let's talk about the grip that you're going to have on the kettlebell while it's in the dead position. And of course, you're going to have this, generally speaking, with 2 hands on the kettlebell. Unfortunately, this demonstration kettlebell doesn't really allow me to do that. But the handles do get a lot bigger as the kettlebells get heavier. So as with a heavier kettlebell that I was attempting to maybe do a deadlift with, that would not be a problem. But here we go. Here's the grip that you have on that from this view here. You can see that I'm not getting a lot of fingers around that handle. I don't want to be here. I want to really just kind of hook that handle. Now, also, this handle is a lot smaller in diameter than most kettlebells would be, or a heavier kettlebell. So generally speaking, I might actually have a bigger, a looser grip or a more open grip, whereas the smaller handle, I close the grip a lot more. Now, the thumb, generally speaking, you want to bring that around and make contact with the index finger and the middle finger. You see that? That connection right there, the thumb to those 2 fingers, is very, very powerful. And as we progress in our training, you're going to learn how to use that connection to really allow you to have quite a lot of potential with certain lifts. So here we have, in the dead position, we have our hook grip, thumb over the fingers, and of course that is hanging like this as you deadlift it, okay? Noticing that with the hook grip, that the bell is trying to move this way out of our grip at this point, okay? Because that's going to be relevant. So we have that hook grip, thumb over those 2 fingers. Generally speaking, anytime the bell is trying to escape our hand by coming out away from our hand, okay? Now let's move into the pre-swing position as opposed to the dead position. And pretty much the same thing. The only difference here is that now the kettlebell sits out front. So it's still right in the middle between my heels, but it's out front just a little bit. How far out front is actually going to depend upon your body. This is actually a little bit too close for me. I'd actually probably back it up to here because I have long arms. And this is the position for the kettlebell before you come with 1 hand or 2 hands to do a ballistic exercise like a swing, clean, or snatch, for example. Both are going to use that hook grip, okay? Now, as we bring the bell up our body, the grip is going to have to become a little more dynamic. It's going to have to transition because now, of course, the bell is not trying to escape out of our hand here in the rack position and also in the overhead loaded lat position. The bell's not trying to escape the same way. It's sitting down into our hand. And here, of course, I don't have to use a lot of grip strength to keep the bell in this position. So this is what we call the rack position. This is definitely a position that you want to learn and develop with practice. It's not as simple as it may look, but make sure that you've got your fist under your chin, that you've got 3 points of contact with that kettlebell, which is the back of the wrist, the chest, and the bicep. This one's not really touching my bicep. That's because it's a small kettlebell. But those would be the 3 points of contact. And then this free hand come off to the side as a counterbalance. And then there's your rack position. As I start to use heavier kettlebells, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to keep this weight feeling a little bit lighter, meaning I'm going to move that weight slightly over my own plumb line to here by shifting, just moving my hips more under that mass. And that's going to make the kettlebell feel a lot lighter, and I can hold it here and take a breath. Whereas here, that bell's kind of pulling me in this direction. It's going to feel a lot heavier, okay? So I really think about it as the combined mass of your upper body. Just think of that as a combined total, and then try to find the balance point there, and that's going to help you out when you're racking up very heavy kettlebells. So there's your rack position. The kettlebell here, this is a really important part of the grip with kettlebells that people really struggle with, is that you want your hand going all the way through the window. The window is this right here, all the way through the window of that handle. And this window is really small because this is such a small kettlebell, but I can still get a pretty good angle, as you can see, with that handle. It still sits really low. A bigger window will actually sit even lower than this, but that's the position you want. The mistake that a lot of people make, and you actually, this is one of the great things about the Turkish get-up, is that it's a really good opportunity to correct this mistake, is that people, they have that handle all the way up here. It's above the pad right here in their palm. It's always going to be above the muscle in the thumb no matter what, but it's above this pad. It should be below that. It should be there, okay? If the handle is up here, if it's too high, I can't get it to stay high, but there it goes. It's going to pull your wrist into extension like that. And even if you can resist the extension, it's still trying to do that, which is going to stress out these muscles. And that's not what we're trying to do here. So drop it down. And now we can focus on the bigger muscles of the movement, not the little guy right here. Okay, so there's your position. There's what we call the spear hand position, and this is what you're going to utilize in the rack. It's also what you're going to utilize for a grip in the overhead loaded lat, also known as fixation position. Okay, so there you go. No matter where, from here on up, the bell's trying to go down into my arm so I don't have to grip it too hard. And so I'm going to use that position. Get your hand all the way through the window and don't let the wrist extend, okay? So the tricky part is the transition between the hook and what I'm showing you here, the spear. And it's very difficult for a lot of people because what they tend to do, and I think naturally we would all tend to do this, is over grip the kettlebell as it transitions from this hook into the spear, okay? Over gripping it. And then what you see is it's in the fist here for the hook, and then it comes around for the spear, and that kettlebell is rotating on the axis here of the handle, and it's doing it rubbing up against the skin in the palms, which of course is going to give you some blisters. Also, what happens when you're gripping the kettlebell that way is that it slows down the rotation of the kettlebell in the clean and the snatch. When the kettlebell is supposed to be rotating to get onto the back of the wrist without banging, but when you grip it too hard, you slow that rotation down and then it starts to bang. So I'll show you what that looks like. It's like this. I'm holding on too tight. The bell went up too high and came down and smacked. If I let it go, the bell doesn't climb so high, but if I hold on tight, I end up here, and then that happens. So on the way down, the same thing. It's not going to bang your wrist, but way too much grip, and it's kind of like you're trying to just, or people, I see this all the time with my clients when they're learning this, they're trying to just muscle it and not let that bell go. Between those two grips, you got to learn how to let it go. You got to learn how to get as little skin contact with that kettlebell as it's transitioning as possible. Okay. Now on the way up, when you make that transition, the bell is usually floating right when you make that transition. Okay. So it happens very quickly, which means that you will have to take the time to learn that transition. It'll take a minute. Use some sweat bands on the back of your wrist, something I talk about in a lot of videos. A couple of just basic sweat bands can really help to go a long way when you're learning this, so you don't bang or bruise, let's say, the wrist when you do bang it. But you're going to learn how to go from your hook to punch through the spear with as little contact on that bell as possible. As soon as you let go of the hook because you've reached full extension, because after you've reached full extension, you don't need the hook anymore because you're not able to pull up on the bell anymore because you're fully extended. The bell is now floating. So you get to full extension and then let go of the hook and then just open up the hand and just let it float all the way through that window. And if this is difficult, just do it with, like the way I'm doing it, with a super light kettlebell, and you'll get it. You go from that hook to an open hand, and you're no longer trying to over grip, and that bell will behave as it's supposed to. It's not gonna. You got to let go of it. You got to relinquish control. Okay. All right. So that's that. On the way back down, the same thing. You're going to dump it and your open hand, and then when it just falls down, then you hook it and catch it. So it's there. It's right into that. From here, you dump it, and your hand is open, and then you hook. As soon as that bell, you'll feel it, comes down to your fingers, you just hook it. Okay? That's the transition that's so important, that takes a long time to learn, but like I'm showing you here, use a really nice light kettlebell. And you know now, from watching me and listening to this, you know now more than a lot of people who have been training with kettlebells for months, if not years. I see people do this all the time that have been doing this for a very long time. They're over gripping the heck out of that kettlebell, and they just never learned those transitions. When you learn the transitions, you save your hands, and you also get more volume. You're able to do more lifting. You're able to do higher. You're more efficient. Efficiency equates to more volume, getting closer to your potential. It also equates to more safety in your training. Okay. Now, let's wrap this up, because I'm going to get into the final grip that is more advanced. So I saved kind of the best till last. And this is one of my favorites and something that I'm going to add in here. So if you're still very early on in your training, you may not need this part yet, okay? But maybe you can hang around and listen. But if you're getting a little more advanced, then this one's for you. The one mistake I think a lot of people make in their training is that they sleep on bottoms-up training, meaning that they do everything else, but they don't really see the point of bottoms-up training. They don't integrate it into their practice soon enough. I say, before you progress to a more challenging exercise, for example, from a clean into a snatch, progress the clean by going now bottoms up and practicing that for a little while, then go into the snatch. So do every exercise, Turkish get-up, the same thing. You do your Turkish get-ups before you start going super heavy or progressing it into bent presses and things like that. Work on the bottoms-up Turkish get-up, man. Those are so difficult because of the time under tension. So I'm going to show you guys the bottoms-up grip and a few of the sort of nuances that I use when I do bottoms-up training. And there you go. I'm going to give you some of my little pointers and hints. They may work for you. They may not work for you, okay? I think that with bottoms-up, there's so much technique involved that the only real way to solve this riddle is to just put in the reps. But what I'm telling you guys is put in those reps, okay? So with bottoms up, we have a kind of a similar grip that we had when we were in our hook, which was here. Now, if you notice in my hook, I can get my finger under here. Now with a bigger handle, I wouldn't be able to, but the kettlebell at this point is trying to leave my hands going that way, okay? In a swing or snatch or deadlift, it's trying to exit out that way. Now, when we go bottoms up, the kettlebell is not trying to do that. It's trying to sit down in my palm, but what it is trying to do is it's trying to pivot on the axis like that. That's what we're trying to prevent, as well, of course, as the fact that it's trying to also follow the line of gravity back down to the ground. So we've got those two things that we're dealing with. For this grip, it is kind of similar to the hook that we utilized for the deadlift and everything else, with the thumb going over the index and or middle finger, potentially and middle finger. But now, because the kettlebell isn't trying to sit up so high, it's trying to sit down, you actually have a full grip on that kettlebell. Again, this handle is tiny. Generally speaking, I'm doing this with like a 70 to 80 pound kettlebell. The diameter of that handle is much bigger, so my fist is way more open. And it's so open, in fact, because of the size of those handles, that my thumb is not really making much contact with the middle finger. It's really just making contact more with the index finger. It's kind of like that, but the bell sits really low, of course, in the palm. So when you're doing your bottoms up, you really, really have to embrace this strength in this connection right here. It's very powerful. And one analogy I use here is like when you're snatching a kettlebell, if it starts to look a little messy up top, all of a sudden you're at 5-10 reps in and it starts to look a little messy, try to correct it with more power. It generally works with a snatch. The same thing here with the bottoms up clean and press is that if you're and it's looking really messy, try to correct it with just cinching down on that kettlebell even tighter in this connection right here. And it goes a long way. So when that kettlebell, when you go to bottoms up, clean it, I will grab it in a normal hook grip. As I clean it up and the weight transitions to being now in my palm, it'll come down and I will close my grip. So originally I'm here. It's open, the bell comes in, and I close the grip and I cinch that tight connection. And excuse me, you notice how my hand sits close to the horn of the kettlebell and that it's always the horn closest to my body. Okay? Now, by putting my finger up against the horn, it actually gives me a little bit of resistance to stop the swivel on the axis because I'm connected to the horn. Okay, it's just like another point of contact. So that's why I do that. And then I'm letting this curved portion of the handle. All kettlebells are slightly different in their shape here, by the way. So some will be a little bit different. But this, where it starts to taper into the horn, I want that curve in that pocket right there. So there's your crush grip for a bottoms up clean and then bottoms up press all the way up to the top. That's one of my, like I said, it's one of my favorite exercises. And then of course you're going to be doing your Turkish get-ups. You can do Turkish get-ups, bottoms up, and then that's the grip that you want to use. Bottoms up is, it looks like it's so much about grip strength. And I've had people come up to me like, wow, you must have so much shoulder stability to do that, or so much core strength, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like everybody looks at it and thinks it's something different that is required in order to do bottoms up. All of those things are true, but I would say that honestly, the primary skill that you're going to develop that's going to actually help you to really increase your capacity with bottoms up training is your proprioception, meaning that when that bell is up above you, and if it starts to go in any direction, that you can adjust accordingly. Kind of like if you see these, you take a broom handle and you try to do that, right? So with a kettlebell, you've got 80 pounds that's up above you like this. You have to be able to just sense even the slightest movement, so that you can fluidly and smoothly make any adjustments that you need to make sure that you're stacked elbow, fist, bell. And that line that stack makes is as close to your plumb line as possible, because the further away from your plumb line it gets, the heavier that kettlebell is going to feel, and it's going to become very difficult to actually overhead press it. So you're on the hook to keep this line and this line as close as possible, while also feeling for the movement of the kettlebell, adjusting accordingly, and keeping that bell in that line. And so that's really what's going on. It's mostly, honestly, the challenge of this exercise and in the thing that you're going to develop, the skill set that you're going to develop that's going to allow you to really increase and improve your potential or towards your potential the skills, the proprioception and the nervous system, and getting it tuned in to the movement of the kettlebell. And that to me is what's so cool about it. I love exercises where I'm totally dialed in and I'm looking at the kettlebell, I'm feeling the kettlebell, I am one with the kettlebell. All right. This video definitely has gone on a lot longer than I anticipated, but hopefully it is good information that is going to help you along the way. Let me know what questions you have or what other content you'd like me to cover. I'll talk to you guys soon.